Hey, what's going on, guys? It's me, Train Man, and welcome back to the Zombie Train episode 207. I was gonna guess that. This is an episode where I continue building a mountain. And in fact, I make quite a lot of progress building a mountain. And I think my mountain building skills have actually improved since the last episode, and I frankly can't think of much else to do right now. Because nothing else is really hugely pertinent, although there are some sections that I guess I could work on now that some other episodes are going to be coming up, and I think I've done enough with this area. Or no, at least I need to start texturing the mountain, so I need to have some more of the mountain done. Anyways, this is mostly an episode where I build terrain, so enjoy that. But today we're going to talk about Mother Russia. And this was actually inspired by a comment by EastRail11 in episode 191, which is Russian Zombies, Communist Zombies, Russian Bias 2, which obviously is mostly a joke, but it's worth pointing out. It's worth talking about Russia, and I'm probably going to get sidetracked into some other things. I've got a non-Zombie Train related topic in my back pocket for this episode because I can't say everything, I don't really remember everything, and I don't have my aid with me. I don't have my references. I don't have World War Z, which actually, if you want to hear more about this topic specifically, there's some stuff in World War Z about what happened in Russia specifically. And I'm going to be referencing the book next episode as well, which is going to be about North Korea. It's a sub-comment to the same comment I just pointed out. But I'll probably forget I said this. Anyways. So, Russia had a particularly hard time, you'd figure. For a nation where, for a nation with as many stereotypes as they have, sort of the, strong, powerful, whatever, they sort of got swept off their feet by zombies, much like the United States did. It was basically just proof that nobody can be ready, or, nobody was ready. Nobody thought they were ready to begin with, really, but it was despite all the preparations that were in place for a scenario like this, not necessarily this specific scenario, it took everyone by surprise. When World War Z began, just like many other countries, the country turned on its head. And keep in mind, this is winter, so when stuff started going downhill, it meant a lot of people without power, and thus without heat. And thus a lot of people that died due to environmental means that were neither zombies nor other people. So then Russia sort of got its act together, got organized a little bit. There was I've talked about the I don't remember what the group was, what I called them, but the group that was putting pressure on the holdouts on the Mediterranean Sea, where we got the stuff to refine oil again. But they were not affiliated with the Russian government, if I remember correctly. And the Russian government did manage to get its crap together and start combating the zombie menace wholesale, probably faster than we did, but they also were a lot more centralized in where they could govern from. Not that Moscow is really central to Russia as a whole, which it's not, but it's closer to more of the population centers than the west coast of the U.S. is to the east coast of the U.S., which made it a little bit easier because they could fan out directly. Also, it was winter, and that did inhibit the zombies to an extent. The Great Panic happened, they didn't manage to recover from that by the time the summer came around, and then you had real problems with the zombie hordes. And then the following winter was when they started to get a lock on things. Now, this wasn't an easy thing to do. The populace was kind of all over the place, and having to kill your brethren, etc., if they get bitten or infected was not something that you can do easily. Now, this was kind of a consequence of them being able to turn it around so quickly. Their tactics were sloppy, I guess. You could call them that. and people would end up getting infected on a raid more often than not. And then, of course, you have to execute them before they turn and become a problem, because once they turn, they're unpredictable, blah, blah, blah. And a lot of the soldiers couldn't bring themselves to do this. And it eventually turned to the priests that would be the ones doing this. And they talk about this in World War Z. This is what I'm pulling from there. There's a journal from... there's some excerpts from a conversation with someone, if I recall correctly, who was a priest. Doing these sort of executions that were necessary. And, yeah, they never got the benefits immediately of the tactics that were later developed when fighting the zombie horde as the U.S. military made its way eastward, which were some very efficient block tactics. You'd basically build yourself into a square and let zombies come at you and just have tons of ammo in, and you'd either build yourself into a square if you were surrounded, or if you were able to, you'd form a line, which is what they did when they were advancing more often than not. But they would form a fortification, draw zombies to it, and you'd have a rhythm where you'd cork off one shot, and then the next, and then the next, and then the next, metronomically. And they all had to be headshots. And obviously zombies are not moving too fast, and you'd wait for them to get close enough that you were certain. And if you missed one shot, you were off the line to sort of rest and recover, and they'd swap somebody else in your place. And that was how they took out these huge hordes towards the middle and, the late parts of the war. Were these, like I said, metronomic lines of battle where you'd let them come towards you, and everyone would just pick them off one by one by one by one by one. And that actually worked really, really, really well. It was just, there has to be a lot of discipline there, and you have to really know your enemy to understand how to do that, and that you can do that. And that didn't help at all. I'm trying to adjust the amount of noise that the microphone is making. Oh wow, that actually helped quite a bit. Okay, so that, the Russians didn't get the advantage of that until much, much later. And so they had a lot of battle casualties fairly early on. And they were actually, like I said, it was fairly early on that they were able to turn it around. However, if I recall correctly, there were either 2 or 3 Russian nuclear submarines, and these were cutting-edge ships, titanium-hulled, stuff like that had gone missing. They'd gone MIA. Their commanders had bugged out and sort of made a run for it. There was a report from somebody who was on one of the submarines. Yes, it was 3, because there was the commander of the quote-unquote friendly submarine. Obviously, he friendly to the interests of the world at large. Here's really what happened. I can give the breakdown. There was the friendly submarine. Obviously, they weren't friendly to the U.S. They did not want to turn themselves over, but they didn't like what... they were... If they had gone back to Russia, they probably would have been, shot for treason in the first place because they ran off with the submarine during the Great Panic. And they obviously didn't want to go to the U.S. because it's common sense. They didn't want to go to the U.S. They would have been interrogated and God knows what else. So they stayed on their own, and they joined up with a group which was basically just a bunch of seafaring people, a bunch of ships that had collected at this atoll, and they were using their nuclear reactor to power the lights on the ship, stuff like that, blah, blah, blah. They came under attack by one of the other subs, and in the end, they were forced to take that submarine out. The difficult situation was derived from the fact that the commander of the friendly sub knew that his son was the commander of one of the other two subs, and he did not know until much later. I do believe he figured it out in the end. He did not know until much later if the submarine he destroyed had his son on it or not. I don't remember if his son was the commander or not. Actually, that may have been a hyperbole on my part. But there were these family ties, and he, sort of went against them and took out the attacking submarine anyways. And and these were the three submarines. Now, we didn't know about the friendly one, quote unquote, being where it was, doing what it was. We did know that there were these three subs that had gone MIA because we could pick up radio chatter and decode it that Russia was looking for them. Which, by the way, the sub that got destroyed was had remained in contact with Russia, or at least had reestablished contact with the Russian government, and was actively seeking out the other two, and that's why they attacked this group of ships that had come to this atoll. And yeah, where was I? Yeah, the U.S. Navy, the U.S., was freaking out about these subs. They were worried that they were not the only ones out there, and of course they didn't know where the hell they were to begin with. So that's why the entire nuclear fleet, etc., stayed in the Pacific, and did not help us in the Atlantic. That's why the Zombie Turn Incorporated was using a fleet of refurbished steamships and sailing ships, while the Navy toted around its nuclear carriers and other, nuclear submarines and stuff like that. I believe they have a couple of nuclear-powered cruisers as well. But yeah, and that sort of triggered a little bit of animosity there. It was, you've got all these ships, can't you use them to help us? Of course, the aircraft carriers weren't that useful to us. They could carry a lot and move a lot, but they're loaded up with planes most of the time. And the planes weren't going to go anywhere because the planes run on jet fuel, which, of all the things that are difficult to get out of refining, jet fuel is kind of up there. And so they did not have the ability to do virtually anything with their planes until we came back with the refining capability that we brought over from Europe. Which, when you think about it, should have been a decent incentive for them to be helping us in the first place, but I'm not sure. There may have been some sort of communication breakdown where they were kind of busy working on what they were working on, and they didn't really get that we were trying to do what we were trying to do and get more fuel. We were more or less left alone. They would occasionally check up on us, we would occasionally check in with them, and naturally, when they needed something of us, we'd know. But aside from that, they basically handled foreign policy, and we handled domestic policy. And that was the way things worked, and we didn't interfere with each other very much. It was nice to not have that oversight, but when things came back and we were a subordinate again, I didn't complain too much. Obviously, when we had done things on our own, we sort of did things willy-nilly, but not having the freedom to do all of that the way we wanted to didn't really matter so much at that point, because we didn't have to do things the way we needed to. Basically the way we wanted to do things, the reason things were kind of off the cuff and kind of, unsafe or risky at times, it's because, that was the only real good way to do it. The only way to do it that would, in a lot of cases where lives are on the line, where it would save those lives. And that was really important, obviously. So, by the time federal oversight came back into the picture, we were in the position where we didn't have to worry about life or death so much anymore. So, I'll admit it was annoying. It's obviously annoying. It's always annoying being told what to do. But at the same time, it wasn't that bad. So, I hope you guys enjoyed this video. I know I got off track, but that also wasn't what I wanted to talk about. But anyways, Douglas is real. Look it up. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Train Man out.